Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I wanted to let everybody know as we're getting started, this session is being recorded, so you'll be able to catch up if you miss anything, view this later. It'll be available by the end of the day. As Murray is speaking throughout his presentation, feel free to drop any of the questions into the Q&A box, and we'll answer as many of those as we can at the end of the session. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and hand this over to Murray. Murray, thank you for being
Yeah.
here and being part of Amplify today, and we're so excited to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Nicole. Thanks for the introduction. And it's great to be here, great to be part of this great event. Tiny bit of background for anybody who's never met me or heard from me. I'm the owner of RPM Training. I started off in this industry as a car wash and gas station attendant back in 1986. And from 87 onwards for 25 years, I owned and operated service stations with Bays. And then after that, I got into training gas station dealers, and then I got into coaching and training aftermarket shops. So I've been doing this for a little while, and that's my history. I've been in the trenches. I've been on the other end of people like me speaking. I've been on the other end of other coaches. And I, in the past, have argued and pushed back and discussed and questioned the value of maybe some of the things that I do now. So I do get the fact that we have to come at this from a certain angle. So we're going to be talking about the importance of management training. It's really nice to meet all of you. And I'm going to share my screen now and get going on our material. Like Nicole said, we're going to have a Q&A right at the end of the session. We'll allow a bit of time with that. So I told Nicole that I do this a lot, and now I'm having to rearrange my desktop. There we go. Every once in a while, Zoom moves things around. So the importance of management training. When we think of management training, what do we think about? So I'm going to start with a story called the Lemonade Stand School of Management. All right. I'm sure many of you in your childhood, or you as parents with your children, have had the idea of having a lemonade stand on a nice, hot, sunny afternoon where the kids have decided they're going to go into business and they're going to make a whole ton of money. All right. And so, of course, being young, they need some help. So first we're going to get a table, and then we're going to get a tablecloth, and then we're going to get some chairs. And we're going to need to have a little bit of change so that we can make change for people when they come and pay. And I don't know how to make lemonade, Mom or Dad. And so then we provide them with the lemonade, and now we have to buy the ingredients. And are we making it from a package, or are we making it from real lemons and real sugar? And finally, it's all set up, and the kids are all set up, and the neighbors come and go, and people drive by, and they sell the lemonade, and of course going always back to the refrigerator to get more ice to keep everything cold. And at the end of a long afternoon, the kids are exhausted, they're grouchy, they're fighting, the lemonade's been spilled, everything's all sticky, the kids included. And so then everybody counts all the money, and sure enough, they've sold $20 worth of lemonade. And the kids at that point are, wow, that's a lot of money. And let's pretend there's two siblings, and they each say they get $10. Well, then at the end of that conversation, Mom and Dad step in and say, no, hang on a second. You need to pay us back for the lemons and for the sugar. You need to pay us back for our time for setting up the table. And you need to pay us back for, all the effort that we helped in supporting you with your lemonade stand. And so really, you guys owe us around $40. And of course, the kids would be in tears. And that conversation wouldn't actually go very, very well, right? A lot of people go into business, they want to be entrepreneurs, or they think they're entrepreneurs. Of course, we're speaking specifically about automotive, go into business not understanding how it works. They just see the sale. They just see the money that the client or the customer gives them. They don't necessarily understand all of the costs that have gone into that whole process, right? You might be very good at repairing cars, servicing vehicles. You might be very friendly. You might be very good on the phone. But at the end of the day, there's a whole lot of foundational pieces to a business that a lot of us don't know about, me included, right? Don't get me wrong. I come at this very passionately because of many of the things that I needed to learn back in my day. All right. And a thanks shout out to a couple of the other coaches on this that are speaking and amplify that talked about the lemonade story and taught me that story. I thought it was a really good idea. So hopefully I haven't stolen anybody's thunder from their example. So back to the question about management training. Do all other professionals take training? Yes, they do. When you think of a professional, you're thinking of a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant. You think about an airline pilot. Even you yourselves as technicians, you take training to get better at servicing and repairing and diagnosing vehicles. Everybody who is a professional in what they do takes training. So then why is it that so many people who start an automotive shop, so many entrepreneurs think that they don't need management training, right? The idea of the word entrepreneur is this romantic notion that I have an idea and I'm going to go into business and I'm going to make money and I'm going to have a lifestyle where I hardly have to work and I'm going to have all this free time and flexibility, not understanding all the different principles of business that actually make those people the famous entrepreneurs that actually make them famous and make them wealthy. So what is management training? In my background, speaking to automotive shop owners, automotive types, automotive technicians, to some of them, it's MBA, right? A master's in business administration, right? And maybe in our careers, we've dealt with the MBAs and we find them very impractical people who have got all these degrees and then they come and speak into our lives and they make a mess of things at our business. So maybe we've worked at a dealership before and the general manager has their MBA, or maybe we've worked in a manufacturing plant and the management has an MBA. And so a lot of us in the trades, the blue collar types, as maybe you could stereotype us, we see those MBAs as a bunch of brainiacs who really don't know anything practical. So we sort of write them off and we write off that kind of training. Sometimes we feel it's too corporate. I hear business owners, shop owners talk about, I don't want to go corporate. Somehow there's this perception that if I get structured and I get organized and I have all of this knowledge, that I'm going to be too corporate and I'm going to somehow scare customers away because I'm too corporate, or I'm going to scare employees away because I'm too corporate. And at the end of the day, it's really not about being impractical and having knowledge that you can't use. It's not about being too corporate. There are just fundamental things that we need to do well at owning and operating a business, and we don't have to go down these pathways. Other times when we hear things in our industry, it's all about just increasing sales. That's a perception that some shop owners have, that when they hear the word management training or a consultant and that, it's just about increasing sales. Or maybe it's just about making more money. And yes, everybody wants to make more money, but they don't want to be greedy. They don't want to make money off of their customers' backs or off of their employees' backs. And so they push back on management training because, well, that's just a way to rip people off, right? There's a perception that that's what management training is from certain points of view. Or sometimes it's just a box of silver bullets, right? There are people out there offering these boxes of silver bullets, easy, quick solutions that really, at the end of the day, aren't the fundamental things that maybe would solve some of the deeper issues and challenges that we face when we own business. So I'm going to come at this from a very different point of view. I'm going to come at this from, what is a manager's or an owner's job description? You now own a business. What are all of your responsibilities? And as we go through the responsibilities, you're going to see the types of training that you're going to need to be able to do these things. All right. So let's start with first one is your responsibilities as an owner or a manager. All right. In many cases, you are the same person. You are the owner and you are the manager. Some of you listening have large locations and you are the owner and you have managers below you. Some of you have multiple locations, et cetera, right? But let's just talk to sort of the smaller shop where the owner and the manager are the same person. And as a manager, it is your job to operate the business in such a way that the company makes a profit for the shareholders. When you take a look at the corporate world, right? If I buy shares in, a corporation, and I go to a shareholders meeting, I can hold the management of the company responsible for the fact that my shares didn't grow, that the company didn't make a profit, and my investment did not make a return, or maybe I even lost some money investing in that company. All right. We begin to need to think about our business that way as well. Now, you as the owner and manager are also the shareholder, So you're having a conversation with yourself in the mirror in the morning. Hey, my friend, how come you didn't make any money yesterday? Right? Talking to yourself about making sure that there is a profit there. Now, we're not talking just about a salary that you pay yourself to be the manager of the business. We're also talking about the business having a profit at the end of a week, at the end of a month, at the end of the year that reflects your return on investment of your time and your money that you've put into this business. So first things first, we're now going to break this down into its different components. How do we make a profit for the shareholders? Well, this means that we need to understand how to measure the business. How do I know if the business is making a profit? That means that I have to learn how to create and read financial reports. Now, at a certain point, I will probably delegate this out to a bookkeeper who is an expert. I might delegate out some of this to my CPA or my accountant, and that's fine. But I do think we need to take courses and training to understand how these reports work. At a certain point, you can delegate that out to somebody else. I know how to read an income statement. I know how to create an income statement. I actually have a bookkeeping firm that does all of that for me because there's other things that I'm actually more interested in and or better at doing. The other thing, besides understanding these reports, is understanding and attaining the industry benchmarks. When we talk about benchmarks, we're not talking about numbers that some fancy economists have made up. We're talking about numbers that have been measured now for 30 or 40 years that are the best practices. And the shops that end up with the best numbers, here's how they get there, and here's how we attain those benchmarks. Some of the statements that we would need to learn about would be a balance sheet. Again, you might not generate the balance sheet. Maybe your CPA is doing that, but it's important that you understand how to read a balance sheet, how to read an income statement, or sometimes known as a profit and loss statement, a P&L. Understanding cash flow. It's really interesting to me how few people actually understand cash flow. Knowing that there's going to be these peaks and valleys of money coming in and expenses that need to go out, and not understanding how important it is to look after our cash flow. In addition to understanding all of the reports that we have to do and the KPIs, we then need to learn and provide and train the systems and the procedures that are required to attain these benchmarks. Some benchmarks that we can maybe elaborate on would be a 50% to 60% gross profit on your parts. We're talking about an average repair order of 3 billed hours or sold hours per repair order. We're talking about a technician efficiency of 125%, or a service or parts a labor gross profit of 70%. These are some of the key performance indicators that we would be implementing systems in place to do that. All of these systems, and this is just a short list, involve things like the write-up procedures, right? The intake of the client when they drop off their car. There should be a way of doing that that is the best way to do it so that you get the best result. The client has the best experience, the technician has the best experience, the service advisor is organized, and the business is profitable. We then talk about scheduling as a process and a system. The way we schedule affects how profitable we are. How we dispatch the work throughout the day to our technicians affects how profitable we are. Getting paid for testing and diagnosis is an important feature. Understanding how to package testing procedures so that we get paid for them. Then we get into team time management, understanding productivity and efficiency, and how to use either analog clocks or digital clocks with our team to understand the outcomes that we need. Good inspection processes, particularly going towards the DVI, digital inspection processes. There are a set of best practices that get the best results that you would need to learn how to do that. And of course, then there's dealing with deferred work, and it's something that I call my 400% rule. A quick review of that rule is every vehicle, every time gets some form of inspection. It could be a simple one or a more complex one. Everything we identify in the inspection, we estimate. Everything we estimate, we present to our client in a professional manner. We don't hit them over the head with large numbers. We do it in a staged way. And then the last percentage is everything that is not purchased is deferred until the next visit, and we go through that cycle of the deferred work rule. All right. Again, each of these things involves hours of class work and learning it, and then hours of learning how to apply it in your business, and then training your staff on how to do that. We then need, as a manager of business, we need to learn how to attract, how to hire, how to train, and how to retain employees required to fill the different positions in the company. Do we know what the positions are? Do we know what the positions job descriptions are? Have we elaborated on that? Have we taken some training on creating good job descriptions? Do we understand the latest in attracting and retaining employees? How to interview? Interviewing is a skill. It is not just asking a bunch of questions. How to onboard successfully. The term onboarding has been around for quite a while, but it is a good term. How do you bring a new employee on? It's not just about training them, it's about bringing them on board to your shop and how we do things here, where, meeting your coworkers, where are the washrooms, where's the equipment, how are the benefits working, what are the vacation days, what are the pay days, all these different pieces of bringing a new employee onto the business, onboarding them there. And of course, how to engage your employees so that they want to come to work, they feel like bringing their best to work, and yet holding them accountable for when they are not following procedures or maybe not delivering on what they had committed to deliver, right? So there's that balance there, and that takes learning. Some of you are more natural at some of these leadership skills. Some of you need to learn them, but at the end of the day, all of us need to take training on this whole employee engagement process. We will then be providing job descriptions, providing training plans, having staff meetings, having regular employee reviews. What does that look like, and understanding how that looks? All right. I think we're going to have some time to answer some questions about what kind of staff meetings work and stuff like that. So that might be a question that might come up closer to the end of my presentation. Now, another part of being the manager is that you will ensure that all of the company operating expenses are paid and paid in a timely fashion. You understand accounts payable. You understand the accumulation of the provincial or state taxes, sales taxes, or federal taxes that you've accumulated that have to be sent back, right? So your accounts payable has to be tracked, that your accounts receivable are collected. I'm hoping that most of you do not have accounts receivable unless it's commercial or fleet accounts receivable. That, of course, would be what we call good debt or good paper, all right? Understanding how this works affects how your cash flow works, right? Keeping track of what you owe and what you are owed. Included in that is the tracking of cores and tracking of returns, having somebody who is in charge of that. Having, cores now are sometimes in the thousands of dollars for a core on an item. Horrible story of a shop hired a brand new apprentice, didn't train them about cores. The apprentice threw a piece of metal into the scrap metal bin. The scrap metal bin got taken away the next day, and they threw away $1,000 into the scrap metal bin. Now, could we yell and scream about how dumb that apprentice was? No, they weren't trained on the value of that particular piece of metal. Thousands of dollars slip through our fingers when we don't track our cores, our unused returns, track our credits from our suppliers, track our warranty labor from our suppliers and things like that. That's a lot of money that accumulates that we need to track. Tracking your warranties and credits, as I've said, from your suppliers. Somebody needs to be auditing that and tracking that on a weekly and a monthly basis. Using purchase orders for everything that you buy so that you can trace every purchase to a purchase order. And if you can trace an issue with warranties or credits, it helps you trace fraud if anything like that appears. In some cases, you might get a discount for paying your bills early, right? Understanding the early pay opportunities, and maybe you can save 1% or 2% a month from that supplier if you pay by a certain period of time. Understanding what that does to your bank account when you can shave off 2% of your parts bill over a year, that is a lot of money that you can accumulate in your business. Which means that when you look at all these details, means that as a manager, you need to have time to do this, right? Or delegate certain features of it to some of your team members. I mentioned about the taxes that you collect and remit. Many people, when they first go into business, just do not pay attention to it. And next thing you know, they owe the IRS or they owe the CRA or they owe their state or their province thousands and thousands of dollars, which then leads to bankruptcies because they didn't keep track of that. That's not our money to keep. That money needs to be put into a bank account probably every day for some of you, and then paid out at the proper times and sent it into the different government offices where you do that. We also need to understand about other tax structures and how they might affect you. How is the corporate tax structure? How is your personal tax structure? Pardon me. In Canada, we have what's called a proprietorship, or we have a corporation, or sort of the two business models that would happen. And what is the best way to do that? In the United States, you have LLCs, you have proprietorship, you have Corp Cs, C Corps, S Corps, understanding what those mean and how they can affect you now, but also how they can affect you in the future. Setting your company up one way now to save money in accounting fees might hurt you in 10 years when you sell that company. And all of a sudden, now you have to pay thousands of dollars in accounting fees to restructure the company to make the sale easier or to make the sale better so that you avoid certain other capital gains taxes. Again, we have professionals in our life. We should hire good bookkeepers. We should hire good accountants and CPAs. But at the end of the day, we should learn about the basics of this so that we can make better decisions and understand what some of our professionals are talking to us about. You're going to research and source the required tools, the required equipment, training, software, computers needed to operate the business. Currently, my coaching clients are on a Slack chat right now talking about the best air conditioning machines to buy, the latest and greatest of the newest refrigerant, right? Discussing the features and benefits of the different brands, the costs, so that they make a good decision about that piece of equipment. We also want to meet with our suppliers to negotiate best pricing and service. This is not a look for the cheapest price conversation. This is not a meet with a supplier and complain about how bad they served you. This is meeting with a professional that hopefully has been serving you well, giving you what you deserve, and then negotiating a balance between service and price. Because sometimes getting the lowest price comes with a lot less service, right? So understanding that relationship with our different suppliers and working there. It's also important to understand that we should probably give close to 3/4 of our business to one supplier for our parts purchases. In the long run, that relationship can probably save you or add another 2% to your bottom line by having that relationship, because they are willing to do things for you because of your loyalty to them, all right? And having professional conversations with those people. You will then need to learn how to manage and control the expenses of the business to ensure that the business can operate effectively, yet not waste money or overpay. You can't just cut back and still have a business. You still need to have your building, and you still have to pay the property taxes. You still have to pay the utilities. You need light, you need power. You still need to pay your employees. You still need to pay your bookkeeper. You need to pay for your marketing. These are all things that need to be paid for that are part of having a business. It's important to have expenses, otherwise you can't have the infrastructure to run the business, but there is a balance. In our industry, we're looking at having our fixed operating expenses being no greater than 40% of our sales, right? So for every dollar I sell, 40 cents of it is going into my fixed expenses, all right? These does not include technician wages, but it does include manager and service advisor wages and what we call occupancy cost, right? Either the lease or the rent on the building or the mortgage and the property tax on the building. So we want to balance that. And sometimes if the expense goes too high, we might look for a better source or a less expensive source for an item, or we may decide we no longer need that subscription, or we no longer need that expense anymore because things have changed and we no longer need that expense anymore. So keeping on top of that pretty much on a monthly basis is really, really important. You're then going to research and create a marketing plan to grow your business and perform all of the public relations and customer relations roles that need to be carried out. Now, again, as you grow, you might hire a marketing firm, a social media agency, somebody to run and support your website, somebody to do your Google ads and your Google SEO. Your personality might not lean to public relations and customer relations. You might be more of an introvert, or maybe more of a serious kind of a technical person. So maybe you need to hire advisors that are a little bit more friendly or a little bit more bubbly on the front counter, so that we have that really good customer relations experience. But you still need to understand how marketing works, having a marketing budget, having money set aside to spend on marketing, understanding when to schedule the marketing that is the best effective use of that money to bring the new clientele in, or retain existing clientele and database marketing to your existing database. In addition to this whole list that we're talking about here, we're also going to be held accountable for good corporate citizenship and good environmental and labor practices. So what does good corporate citizenship mean? Well, are you part of the Chamber of Commerce in your community? Are you aware of how the municipality or the county is making decisions about land rezoning and different things like that? You want to be a good corporate citizen in the sense of you don't pollute, you make sure that your site stays clean and that you're not contributing to any pollution outside of anywhere else. A good corporate citizen maintains their properties. A good corporate citizen maintains all the things that make them look good to their community around them, regardless if people in that community are their customer or not. And of course, then there's best labor practices. Now, there's two sides to conversing about labor and or human resources conversation. There's the legal aspect of it, the black and white, the dotting the I's and crossing the T's in terms of employment contracts, in terms of our obligations legally. But on the flip side of it is what are best labor practices to retain and engage people so that we actually don't need to fall back on the legal, right? We do need to have all the legal things in place as a foundation, but we need to operate and run our business in such a way that people like coming to work, that they feel respected, that they feel acknowledged, that they feel safe in the business, that we have processes in place to deal with the situations when they become unsafe or when there's communication issues or relationship issues and things like that. So at the end of the day, you can avoid a lot of human resources issues, a lot of firing issues by good hiring, by good review processes, and by really good HR processes. So one last thing, we're going to go to Q&A here in a little bit. I just want to cover one more slide here. There's the importance of management training, but then there's the importance of coaching. It's one thing to take the training, to sit in classes and learn it, get the knowledge. It's another thing to actually go back to your business and implement it. And that's where great coaches, and there's many of us on this Amplify session, great people that I get to collaborate with. We help you apply the knowledge. We help you get past roadblocks to implementation. Maybe you hit a plateau, or maybe you hit a roadblock that you can't get past. We are there to encourage you when you're tired and discouraged. We're there to hold you accountable to your commitments. And then being part of a mastermind group or a performance group or a dealer 20 group gives you the ability to rub shoulders with other owners and managers that are going through the same thing. And then they also provide all of the above for you as well. So it isn't just about getting the training. I think signing up for coaching is one of the greatest opportunities to actually implement everything. So on that note, Nicole, have we got some questions that people want to bring up?
We don't have anything in the Q&A yet, so I did want to remind everyone that that's available. Feel free to pop some questions in. If you guys also want to raise your hands, I can give you the opportunity to turn your mic on and you can ask questions live. But Murray, if you had a couple more things that you wanted to run through while we still have a few more minutes here.
Sure. I kind of rushed through this last slide because I was thinking that we had some Q&A looking at our timing here, right? So just to elaborate on this is there's a human condition that I work, like we as human beings, just so everybody knows, full disclosure, I have a coach myself that coaches me, an executive coach that I've hired. So I'm speaking as someone who takes training and is coached while I do training and coaching as well. But when I'm working with shop owners and they're having challenges with some of their team members and implementing change or training new concepts and things like that, I need to remind them that there's knowledge is one piece of change. The ability to apply that knowledge is another piece of human learning. And then there's the desire to make the change as well as an employee or a team member in the business. And what ends up happening is we assume that because they know that they should be able to do. And what we need to do is actually get them to teach us back what we taught them. And then that will then indicate us if they can actually apply that information. So I'm going to use a mechanical example because a lot of these people listening are technicians. That comes to mind very quickly. And then while I'm doing that, I'm hoping I can think of a more management example, right? So this is probably a bit more old school on cars, but having a apprentice be taught how to do a timing belt on a double overhead cam engine. They've gone to school to do it. They've taken the theory of doing it. Would you assign that apprentice to do that without actually having them, demonstrate that they could do it? And chances are you would say, no, I wouldn't, because that's a very complex job. So the idea is the first one, you would probably have to do it with that apprentice so that you could demonstrate the pitfalls that they could fall into. Even though they've done the theory, they still are physically now working on that car, right? So there's a lot of this show me back that you can do that. And a management example would be, for example, I was just working on some scheduling issues with a class yesterday, and there's this tendency on the part of advisors to shortcut the scheduling process, right? So for example, Nicole, if you called me up to make an appointment, I'd say, oh, hi, Nicole, great. What time? So 9 o'clock tomorrow, what do you drive? And I've just written down the 3 things, and I say, thank you very much, I'll see you tomorrow, as opposed to slowing down, taking a deep breath, and saying, Nicole, if you have a minute, I'd like to just go into your history here and see if there's any outstanding services from your last visit. Do you have any other concerns with your vehicle? How's it riding? How's it running? How do the brakes feel? How are the lights? I'm going to ask a few questions. I'm going to probably check in with you on how your day is going or how's life right now. And then I'm going to wrap up by making sure I have all the proper contact information so that when you show up tomorrow for the appointment, I've already asked you half the questions in the phone call before. I don't have to ask them now. So I actually save time now when you drop off the car, and maybe I can spend less time over the details and more time being personable with you and talking about life and family and weather and things like that, right? So there's a transition, and working with advisors and helping them understand that and doing role plays and practicing that whole process, right? So that would be some examples of what I talk about with knowledge, application, and desire. So I see we do have one question pop up.
We did. How do we handle setbacks or failures while coaching?
Oh, this is a fantastic question. Do we have 10 hours? Anyways, a really important thing that I learned a while ago was the control the things you can control so you can deal with the things that you can't. And what I learned was separating guilt and shame in the failure process. So in other words, we did this yesterday with a client. All right, he had a really slow February. Right, sales were down. They broke even. They didn't lose, but it was discouraging. But when I went through their numbers and their KPIs, I said, "Hey, your parts were still at 50%. You controlled your parts margin. You collected your materials and consumables at the proper ratio. You did your inspection processes because I can see that your average work order size was still good, right? You did everything right. You just didn't have enough cars." So that person left feeling encouraged because they felt good about the things that they did do, as opposed to just focusing on the things that they maybe didn't do. And at the end of the day, it wasn't that they didn't do anything. It was that there was just a lot less cars. And then we talked about, well, how do we get more cars during those quieter periods? And then we talked about marketing and giving them some new skills in that part of it. So they came discouraged, felt encouraged, the fact that, you know what, I did do a whole lot of things that were good and right. I don't have to feel shame or guilt. And now I've learned some new skills to move forward. All right. So if that helped, now there's a question on the screen from somebody I know very well. Hey, Brent and Lynn. And I love this question. What drives me to be a coach? It must be a challenging career. I have to say, for the most part, I get up in the morning just ready to go and serve and help people because of how I was helped and served back in the late 80s, early 90s, where a fellow by the name of Bob O'Connor came into my life through a series of people and just was so encouraging, and it held me accountable and taught me tons of things that I didn't know and how that helped me understand. And the challenge that I had was profit was bad. Profit was a dirty word. Even though I was in business, kind of ironic that, I was afraid to charge people properly for what I did. I didn't have confidence in my technician skills, you name it. And helping people understand that profit is not a dirty word and giving people the skills and the tools to, and again, folks, those of you listening, we're not talking about greed. We're not talking about that corporate stuff you all worry about. We're talking about people that have had their first 2-week vacation in 10 years and paid cash to go to Orlando and go to Disney World, right? Because they had the money to do it. We're talking about people reaching out to me and saying, you saved my business, right? You kept me from going broke. People who have reached out to me and said, you have saved our marriage because we now have hope for what we're doing in this business. So honestly, I don't find it that hard most days. Now, let's be real. There are days that I do find hard when I get too many challenging situations in one day. Then because I do something that I'm not supposed to, my coach is helping me with this, is I'm not supposed to own my clients' problems. Kind of hard not to. So I sort of take them on a little bit, maybe a bit more than I should psychologically. But what I found most importantly, full disclosure, transparency here, where I lose energy or where I get tired or why I find it hard is when I don't see progress. I'm a very progress driven person. So for somebody to join coaching and be at, well, I got to shout out to Nick, right? He joins the group at 29% gross profit on his parts, 18 months ago, and he showed up yesterday with 47.5. I mean, are you kidding me? That gives me so much fuel to keep going when I see what that has done to that young man's business. He can now buy the shop off of his landlord, which he would have never dreamt of doing before. So yes, Brent, it is an exciting job. It's great to do it. I appreciate their support. They're a really good shop. They work really hard in their business, and I just find it inspiring to do all of this. So I don't know what our timeline is, Nicole. If there's any other questions or comments from anyone.
I don't see anything else coming in, and we're about at time.
Sure.
So
Okay.
if we want to just wrap this, I do
Sure.
want to thank you again for joining
Mhm.
Amplify and speaking today. Murray, you've
Yeah.
been wonderful.
Well, I appreciate that. And I want to encourage all the listeners, if they haven't been able to attend all of Amplify, to get the recordings and to uh, listen to all the people on Amplify. We're all competitors, but we're good competitors. And we're all bring a different way of doing things, a bit of a different angle or different flavor, but there's a lot of us there to bring resources, and we reach out to us for our courses and our coaching. So quick question: what is the best method of evaluating feedbacks as a coach? Not sure if I quite understand that question, and we're kind of out of time, right?
Is there a way that people could potentially reach out to you if they have
Sure.
questions from
Yeah.
this?
Um, yeah, Murray Voth at rpmtraining.net is my email. Or if they just go to rpmtraining.net, there's a contact form on my website where they can go in and put their email address, their name, and then just pop their questions in there. And yeah, we can follow up with them and answer more of their questions. So,
Perfect. All
all
right.
right.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mary. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody, for
Thank you.
attending. Have a great day.